Welcome to our podcast. I'm Jason Carrier.
And I'm Adriene Pessel.
And boy, do we have an exciting topic today. So we're going to get right into it. We have a special guest, Matthew Ferrara, that's going to be joining us. Matthew has 30 years of both philosophy, entrepreneurial, CEO, professional speaker, online pioneer, and business mentor. And many people don't know that Matthew and I actually used to hang out in the Ascendant cafeteria back when I was really, really young. Matthew has been a part of the Ascend program. A lot of people know that within now the Anywhere brand. He has traveled to over 30 countries. He's spoken to groups as small as 6 to as many as 6,000 people. And if you don't follow him on social media, every day you have something to read, to understand, and get knowledge about the marketplace. He picks people up when they need to be picked up. And we have a great topic today to bring this all together. And we are super, super excited to have him a part of our podcast. So, Matthew, what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is you cannot get in, read the news and not hear about all the people that didn't know anything about real estate. Now I want to know something about real estate, and I want to talk a little bit about the impact of that. So I'm going to start it right out of the gates, if it's okay, Matthew. So, Matthew, welcome to our podcast. We really are fortunate to have you. So let's just get started. First of all, I would like to know, what are the changes that we are going to start seeing from an individual agent standpoint? I'd love to know the changes that are going to impact companies and brokers that support and service agents. And what are the changes impact we're going to see for the public after all of these settlements have come down?
Well, it's a great question, 3 questions actually, and let me just start by saying thank you so much for inviting me to be on the podcast and to have this conversation. And I also want to say thank you for being the leaders that we need right now in our industry. I have, unfortunately, watched too many people in the last couple of weeks on social media not quite sure who to turn to, what to ask, where to get the information. And so I'm grateful that you and your team are addressing this, staying on top of this, putting out content, not just for your people, but for the whole industry. So thank you for that. I guess the short answer to the impact for all 3 of those audiences, the agent, the company, and the public, is that to most of us, what we're going to see are some fairly significant changes in the way in which buyers both receive service and navigate the buying process going forward. Now, some of those changes will be a little bit under the hood. And some of those changes are going to be very, very public. But I want to start by saying, to begin with, that these changes are still up in the air. And that is because we have a proposed settlement, right? We have a proposed settlement by the National Association of Realtors. So let's assume that is going to be at some point. The settlement will be approved in some form. There's a lot of people yet to weigh in yet, and so that may be good, or there may be more challenges ahead of us. But let's assume for a moment that the settlement as it's currently proposed were approved. Then I think the most significant changes, and I'll just go through your list real quickly here, and then we can get deeper into it, but the most significant changes for agents is that it's going to actually give them more power, more empowerment over how they engage with their buyers and how they deliver both value and service to consumers, but it will also unbalance or disrupt the practices that they are used to. So I'm a bit of an optimist in everything that I do. So yes, it's going to feel weird to approach buyer agency differently, but it will feel kind of like how we approach seller agency right now. We'll have more control over proposing our services, proposing our value, and being in control of our compensation. But on the other hand, it's going to be disruptive because the information that we access in MLS will shift, the way in which we go about doing showings and the way in which we make offers will shift. And of course, fundamentally, we're going to have to be in contractual relationships with our buyers from day one, which is going to be a bit of a stretch goal for some of the agents that are out there. I'm fully confident that they can handle it, but I just think it's going to be new, and it's going to obviously create a need for some skill development and some resilience. For companies, this is going to, obviously mean changing how we are both training our sales professionals and supporting them. It means being sure that our salespeople are able to articulate their value, to achieve contractual representation. And also, in some cases, it may mean that organizations are going to have to revamp the service set that they would offer both to buyers as well as to sellers, because sellers will have to alter their practices for attracting buyers. So that's, it's going to affect both sides of the table here. There's not just a one way. And then ultimately for the public, I think what's going to happen is there will be some disruption to how the public typically approaches real estate. But I also want to put out, again, starting with some optimism, because people buy and sell only every 10 years on average right now. I think for a lot of public, it's not going to seem that big of a deal because they haven't done it for 10 years. And so they'll say, oh, well, it's a little different than how I did it in 2000 or 2010 or 1990 or something. But it may not be a big leap for them. Now, anyone in the middle of the process right now, they may have a little bit of retooling of their expectations and their costs, to be honest with you.
Right. I remember in the 1990s when we first went into buyer agency, that was a big shift, and agents had to understand that, we had to make sure everybody knew, who we represented, who was what we did and how we handled it. And we had buyer agency agreements done, but were they done at meeting 1, or were they done at meeting 10? Was it right before you wrote the contract? So I see that that's probably where we're going to be now, where it's going to be, okay, this is not something that we just do sometimes and when you can. You have to make sure you set the agents, this is what we do. This is the protocol. Do you agree?
I completely agree. Now, first of all, let's remember that for some people, this has been the practice for their entire careers.
Right.
So in some states, mandatory buyer agency agreements within the first substantive meeting, which would certainly preclude going to see a home, let alone anything else. That's just been the norm in some states. But like you, I originally am from Massachusetts, although I live now in Las Vegas. But in Massachusetts, we also underwent the transformation from mostly getting buyer representation agreements signed when we were maybe making an offer to some people practicing to regularly and rigorously get their buyer agency agreement just before they went out on their first set of tours. So I guess the good news on that, is that there's lots of practitioners who know how to do this, so we can learn best practices from, and they're proof that their markets didn't collapse, that the buyers didn't run away, that the agent's business didn't fall apart. Like, I love the fact that so many buyers agents have been doing this, because it just encourages me that, we've got this. It'll be different, but we've got this.
Right. No, I agree. I think as an agent, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. In our area, that's the case. It has been, you have to get that done. And so for me, it's a little bit, when it first came out, I was like, wow, you mean not everybody does this? So that's where I'm going, how the public really reacts to this when they hear about it.
And you said something really interesting, Matthew, shaping your value proposition. I think if you asked 10 agents 6 months ago, 1 out of 10 could give you a very clear, distinct reason why they should be hired. Now, 10 out of 10 have to articulate, have to communicate, have to showcase their value so the consumer knows exactly what they are receiving. Because if you do something 1 out of every 10 years, sorry, but if you play golf 1 out of every 10 years, you're going to stink. And the same thing goes here. You need that guided person. What would you recommend, and what are you seeing the agents that do it really well, of all the people you talked across the country, what are some words or some things that you would think about to set somebody apart? It is a commodity-based business. Let's call it for what it is. Everyone's got a friend who's a realtor. What would you recommend that someone deliver a value proposition that would really, the public would hear and go, wow, I have to have that person?
Well, I love that you've brought this up, and I love that you are highlighting it as the center piece, if you will, of navigating these changes. The first and most important thing to realize is that value proposition is in many ways something we've always talked about. And like you said, we may have strongly been able to describe it, but now more than ever, we're going to have to be rock solid in it. And again, the good news is most agents, when they're talking to a seller, they're probably a little more practiced in doing that, doing it with buyers. It's going to be a new thing to communicate. Now, here's something I want to suggest. Here's what I've been doing with all my friends and clients. I've been teaching them a new form of spelling. So we typically spelled value proposition, V-A-L-U-E, proposition. I like to spell it now, V-A-L-Y-O-U. Proposition. So what I want is people to understand that the value in value proposition, the you part is you. So what do you bring to the table that is unique? It's a differentiator. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to be honest with you. Last week, after everybody reacted to the lawsuit, there were a lot of instantaneous posts all over the internet about 100 things buyer's agents do, 200 things buyer's agents do. Let me tell you, friends, that's not a value proposition. That's just feature dumping on people. You're just backing up a truck and going, beep, beep, beep. Look, I'm an administrative assistant. Okay.
I agree.
So please don't do that. That list of stuff, you're just telling me you're like fancy administrator, and that's not what you're valued for, right? So here's what I tell people. This is my favorite thing to tell people. Go read some of your thank you notes and testimonials. Because what people write, that's what they value. They say, oh my gosh, Jason like lowered our anxiety and kept us optimistic through the process, right? Adriene was creative and a great problem solver and gave us hope throughout the process. Those are the parts of the experience that built a connection that only you could do. If you said, well, my value proposition is that I use DocuSign and I can do a form and I can...
You're no different than anyone else out there. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You might as well be a bot at that point. And so that's not helping you. So don't talk about your tasks. It's not your to-do list, but your to-be list that matters the most.
That's great.
When it comes to articulating a value proposition. And clients have already told you what they love. So just go back, pull that out of your testimonials, emphasize that, tell the stories around that. That's really where you need to go.
That's a great suggestion. And Adriene, who's doing this 30 plus years, right?
34, yeah.
Okay. And we're in sales, correct? And one of the top skills for a salesperson is negotiation. How many contracts have you negotiated where either saved the buyer money or you got the sellers more money? Guess what? You can now quantify by hiring you and hiring your services what somebody is getting in value. And to your point, Matthew, it's not a task. It's a tangible item that you can showcase. And that's the part I think we have to deliver. It's not just in the technology tools.
You know what?
Yes, people buy features. Excuse me. Let me back up here for a second. People buy benefits, not features. Right?
Yeah.
People buy benefits. And that's really what we have to emphasize. What we want to emphasize are the outcomes and the benefits. Now, listen, when you buy anything else, it's the same way, right? You don't upgrade your seat on the airplane because of the cushions or because of the silverware, right? You upgrade the seat because it brings you restfulness and brings you comfort and brings you, whatever, lowers your anxiety when flying. If you buy an automobile, it's not because it has 4 doors, 4 wheels, and a tailpipe. It's because it brings you a sense of accomplishment or prestige or joy when driving it. So you've really got to get on the benefit side of the equation here, not the feature side of the equation. And the cool part is that those things are easily quantifiable as well, because people can now say to themselves, I'm better off with you than without you.
There you go.
And I think that's with it. And one of the things Jason and I have talked before earlier, it's going to make agents just become better. Because you need to be, like I joke all the time, you have to be the glue that holds everything together. So you need to know a little bit about the settlement section. You need to know more about financing. So you could really help them and just, again, bring some of the benefits that you bring to the table. Are they retiring? Did they own a investment property before? How that all works. So then you can help direct them and move forward. And I think agents just really need to up their game a little bit and make sure that they are bringing that to the table and showing the public that that's what they're worth?
One of the funny things I think is going to happen a couple of years from now, and it's hard to think of right now, okay? But a couple of years from now, we will look back and we will be able to identify the positive ways we've grown from
Absolutely.
this transition. Now, think about it just a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, we had, we faced a pandemic. We'd never faced that before. And it was very hard to imagine that we were ever going to look back and say, look at what we've grown to be more capable of doing as a result of that. And yet many of us improved our skills, expanded our market share, reached more clients, lowered costs, learned to use new technologies like the one we're using to have this conversation.
Right.
So it's hard right now because we're in the flux. We're in the anxiety of the flux. But I look at this and I say, wow, agents are going to be in control of their destiny. They're going to be in control of their value proposition. Frankly, now let's be really clear. They're going to be in control of their revenue because there are agents right now who under the current system accept the revenue proposed by the other side. And let's be honest, there are some listing agents out there who aren't very good at defending their value proposition.
Right.
So as a result, they might be accepting a fee that's not very high or appropriate to what they deliver for value. And now they're offering even less to the buyer side of the equation, and buyers are doing the buyer's agents are still doing the same amount of work, but they're simply accepting someone else's estimate of their value rather than their own estimate of their value, right?
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Sure.
So with the, we're talking about how the buyer and the buyer agent and the listing agent, how they work. How do you think the associations are going to handle this with, some people leaving NAR and, and starting their own and, how it's all going to work and a multiple listing service and how that's all going to work out? I mean, how do you see that going?
Well, let me start with the easier of those two questions, which is where do I see MLSs going? Right now, here's the best part. I work with a lot of MLSs out there. I'm very proud to have worked closely with CMLS and the Council of MLSs for many years. And I am more confident than ever that the value of MLS will go up. And that is because MLSs do so much more than simply housing the offer of compensation. They are the sources of truth for data. They are constantly validating that data. They're making communications easier. They are also, in many cases, adding layers of service that empower both seller and buyer agents' ability to get things done. So I actually see the value of MLSs going up anyways, regardless of this particular settlement or any changes. And by the way, as a side note, the changes being proposed in this settlement to MLSs have already been adopted by a number of MLSs years ago. So they've not gone out of business. They've not lost members. All they've done is grow as a result of this. So MLSs are super smart organizations. Their role, I think, is going to get more important, not less, especially as a tool for navigating the change. Now, associations, I think they're going to have a very similar opportunity, right, to strengthen their ability to educate their members, advocate on behalf of their members, provide them guidance. But let's be fair. Let's be honest here. There is a risk for both. And that is that some agents who might decide not to make the transition for whatever reason, they might throw in the towel. Maybe they're not able to make the transition. Maybe they don't have as great service support and training as people at your organization have, for example. And so they don't make the cut. Well, that may reduce the head count a little bit in this business. But let's be honest, the head count in our business grows and declines every single day. Some people leave, some people enter. Some people leave, some people enter. And the new people who enter will enter fully cognizant of the new ways of getting things done, and they'll be ready to go under the new ways of getting things done. So I actually don't believe that associations and MLSs are going to face this sort of destiny of people leaving and having a crisis of membership fees. Could it be temporary? Is it possible that, yes, a number of people in a short amount of time might leave? Yes, but associations and MLSs are quite good at budgeting, and they know how to manage a temporary hiatus, a blip in membership up or down. By the way, we've been through other blips. We've been through blips in the 2008 financial downturn. We've been through blips during the pandemic. So I'm really not that worried about it. And to be honest, if there are other associations emerging out there, I can't actually see that as a bad thing, because more people talking positively about real estate is a good thing. Do I think that NAR or our local or state associations are at risk of disappearing? I really don't. I really don't see how that's the case.
Okay.
So I am hearing you say that you do see a potential decline in the agent population across the country. I think there are, let's call it, there are some people that got in this business because they were going to personally buy a house and they got a license and they wanted to be a part of it. Sorry. And some of the people got in for the wrong reasons. The cream of the crop will rise to the top. And I think that's a great thing. And here we are talking about where we're going to be in 2 years. Wouldn't it be great if the best of the best raised the perception of the value of the realtor because of this? Because those that are on top of their game came to the show. Yeah. And
I see that as more likely. I totally agree with you. I think that this is more of a alignment shift than it is a total volume shift. I see, like I agree. The people who will make the transition and will stay in the business are going to be the ones who are more capable than ever, more proud of their work than ever, more certain of their value proposition than ever. So we'll look back and we'll say that was the moment where the industry had more of a quality alignment as opposed to a quantity fall off. Now, could we lose, let's say we lost 10%, right? It's 100,000 agents over 50 states. You know what I mean? So again, is the real estate industry going to collapse? Not by a long shot. Not by a long shot.
How do you feel like some of the smaller brokers that don't have the capabilities or don't have the financial means to support the agents in training them and teaching them? Do you think we're going to be aligning with more larger companies, or how do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, I do deeply worry about them. So there are smaller organizations that just don't have the resources, and they don't have, first of all, they may not have the leadership or the leadership bandwidth to do this. They certainly won't have the training, the resources an organization like yours has not only great local company depth of management, leadership, training, and resources, but it also has a significant organization behind it and an even more significant organization behind that brand. So those are some really important advantages. And there are companies of all sizes, little ones and big ones, that do have good bandwidth behind them. But let's be honest, there's a lot of them that are not going to make it. Now, again, I'm an optimist. So there are positive things they can do. They can pick up the phone and have conversations with companies like yours and say, you know what, we're better off together than if we close shop. Like, closing shop would be the worst thing to happen to our business, because there's some talent there. There's some good people there. So I think this is an opportunity for more of us coming together. And, that means organizations will join other organizations. I really see this as a very good opportunity to help people who would otherwise be struggling and make the wrong decision, which the wrong decision would be to leave the business. The right decision would be to find organizations that know what they're doing, like yours, and say, you know what, I need to become part of that organization, and let's go. Let's do this together. Let's do this together.
He's speaking our company's mantra, vested in you, together we're better.
Right.
Yes.
One question, Matthew, that I've struggled with, and the how it's going to evolve, we will see. And Adriene, as a real estate practitioner, you and I have chatted, but how commissions are not going to be open and accessible to the public. Now, how realtors are going to be able to properly explain, as they always have, that the sellers have the right to offer incentives to a buyer to bring a ready, willing, able buyer. How that is going to be marketed and how's that going to be syndicated through technology or just having a one-on-one conversation, I am very curious how that's going to evolve, because that typically no one has really been able to pinpoint where that goes, and that's kind of weighing heavy over the industry. What are your thoughts on that topic?
So first of all, let's reiterate that because nobody knows,
Right.
anything
exactly.
I suggest is just it's just going to be out there, right? But here's the funny part. In a way, it's a good thing that nobody knows, because I consider this a signal for open invitation, like open invitation to innovate and to try something new. Now, let's be clear. According to the settlement terms as they're proposed right now, those terms of seller compensation or sellers' offers to compensate, they'll probably shift into the concession world as opposed to the buyer fee world. And again, not a big deal, although it means that agents might have to make a whole lot more phone calls because they won't be able to find it in MLS. They'll have to say, well, we're going to go see that home, but I got to get hold of the listing agent first and find out if that is information that, we should be considering as we tour the home. Now, on the other hand, what the settlement does not prohibit, and I think is, again, quite possible, is for the brokerage world to get innovative. So, for example, on your company webpage, you could list your company listings with your offers of compensation. On your signs, you could have sign writers that say, this is our company offer of compensation on the sign writer. You might create a peer-to-peer app that other practitioners in the business could download and immediately communicate with each other and more rapidly exchange that information. And we don't know where that's going to go. All we know is that it won't be facilitated by the MLSs according to the terms of this agreement, but brokers are great at communicating. And again, we go back to 25 years ago before we had automated MLSs. It was a little bit more difficult to make those phone calls before we had to show the homes. But if that's the worst case scenario, with today, with texting, with all the other apps that are available. So I see an opportunity for a lot of innovation to occur. And I cannot believe that the real estate industry won't figure this out in 2 seconds flat.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's going to have to be some innovations, especially because the collateral damage that might come from this by not being able to figure out a way where this is going to help the buyers for their commissions fee, because not all buyers are going to have money to pay for their agent. Like, you think of a VA buyer, is the mortgage company, they're going to come in and say, okay, well, we can finance that, but that's not going to be part of the closing costs. So what is your takes on, like, people that don't have cash to maybe come out of pocket? Because I work with buyers that, maybe we're working in a deal and the buyer and the seller isn't paying their fee, and they're going to bring money to the table to pay from our fee. Now, how do you see that panning out with buyers that don't have the cash? They're barely coming with enough money to buy their house.
First-time home buyers, VA. In our market, that probably represents almost half of the buying population.
Absolutely. So, well, let me give you 2 examples. Again, I'm going to go optimist, and then I'm going to give you like a little dose of current situation. Okay. So the optimist in me says that when these changes occur, should the settlement come about and it's approved, when these changes occur, other things will change. So mortgage and finance professionals will turn to the government and say, hey, we need you to update the laws. Fannie Mae, HUD, the VA administration, the Federal Trade Commission will suddenly recognize the law of unintended consequences has reared its head. And so again, they may take some action. Mortgage bankers may take some action. So again, we're under the premise, let's not operate under the premise that these changes will happen, but nothing else will change as well. The finance rules may change, but let's be totally honest. Let's assume that those things take a long time. During that period, there will be buyers who will risk going unserved. They will risk being unable to afford those things. Now, 2 things may happen. Again, the realtor community might come up with some innovative pricing practices to be able to handle that. In some states, they may turn to dual agency, which is not the greatest form of agency, but it may be possible to provide some assistance. We may find more attorneys getting involved, which actually could be more expensive and not really helping the buyers. But the bottom line is there's going to be a period of flux, but there also will be a period of innovation where people will try those things. And there will be possibly some buyers who bow out for a while. So let's just be honest about it.
Right.
First-time home buyers, VA, they may have to bow out for a while. This is the law of unintended consequences. This is why the settlement is still so uncertain, because people haven't really thought through all of these cases. When the VA shows up and says, hey, hang on a moment here, you might be disenfranchising a massive group of American citizens. And when, Fannie Mae shows up and says, hey, you might actually be causing unintended fair housing imbalances out there, then everybody's going to have to rethink about it. But if it were to just happen as proposed today, some buyers may bow out. Now, I just want to clarify. That doesn't mean that all buyers will disappear. Currently, we have actually more buyers than we have houses. And so we still are in an imbalanced market. And so the face of the buyer population will change, but it doesn't mean the market will collapse.
Correct. I agree with you. That was what I was thinking. Jason and I were talking about that earlier.
So here's a loaded question. Who are the winners and who are the losers when this all settles out? Who comes out on top?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. I love that question. So
well, because you said it. We talk about unintended consequences all the time, and I can name a bunch of people that it hurts my heart. I mean, we're in the business to not give someone a house. It's a home. It's where they have Thanksgiving and holidays, and we're so proud of the industry that we're in. And I think there's some people that are going to be impacted. So I'd be curious. Winners, losers. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll start with the losers. I think that it is quite possible that a significant number of consumers will be losers. I think that sellers are going to lose the ability to maximally market their home by leveraging the MLS marketplace and fully communicating the offer that of what's available in their home. I think it's a loser, unfortunately, until we create those innovative workarounds. They're going to feel a little pinched on that. And at the same time, a large chunk, as we said, of buyers are going to temporarily experience a lot of problems there. Likewise, there will be a chunk of agents who are going to be losers. And the reason that's the case is either their leadership isn't preparing them, they're not taking this seriously enough right now, they think it's still going to go away, they're not practicing, they're not upgrading their skills, their value proposition, their ability to handle conversations, questions, and objections. So there are going to be some losers in all three categories of impacted audiences. Now, flip that on its head, and I could equally argue that there will be winners amongst those groups, right? So sellers are going to win because they're going to get increased service from better buyers agents who are in that marketplace serving buyers. And buyers are going to get a improvement because they're going to, again, be working with an improved crop of buyers agents. It's also quite possible that price innovation will occur in a way that benefits everybody, right? Because everybody likes price innovation, and we can invest funds differently and we can provide services differently. And to some degree, the consumer may actually benefit from this, or some consumers. Again, to say the consumer is so hard because it's so many, but some consumers may benefit from this simply because, as Adriene, as you said earlier, the game is up for everybody. Everyone's performing at a higher level. Everyone is delivering greater service. Everyone is making certain that they are delighting the customer and pushing their limits of technology and best practices. So I could argue that the same groups, within those groups, it's going to shift who wins and who loses. And I just want to remind everyone that really does happen with every change, though. It's not just the settlement. Anytime there's a change of any kind, some people are going to be stuck for a while. But I'm fully confident that in the long run, it really is something where it's up to us as real estate professionals to determine the future is net positive or net negative based on our ability to get involved and to do what we do well. What I tell real estate agents every day is that change is their middle name. Okay. There's no deal that ever goes exactly by the book, and they're constantly overcoming problems no matter what. And so there's nothing that they've thrown at us. I mean, if you want to think back 3 years ago, 3 years ago, suddenly they shut the entire economy down and everyone was searching for toilet paper, let alone listings, right? And yet we sold more homes than at any time in the last 30 years during that subsequent 18 months, right? We excelled at our job, if you will, because we are masters of change. We are good at this. It's what we signed up for. So I just like to say, thank goodness, it sounds weird. It's going to sound very weird, but thank goodness this happened to the real estate industry because I don't know a better industry that's as good at change as we are. And B, thank goodness it happened at a time when the market fundamentals are solid. I mean, at least we're not facing declining market fundamentals. We're not facing a negative market like we did in 08 and 09. Imagine if these things were coupled with negative market fundamentals. Even though the market isn't as hot as it was a couple of years ago, it's still normal and strong, and buyer interest is still high. We're still on track to sell 5 million homes this year. Bring on the changes. The only thing that I'm waiting for them to announce next week will be the murder hornets. Remember when they then also brought out the murder hornets in the middle of the pandemic? I was like, what else are they going to throw at us? And you know what? We even handled them because they didn't turn into a big deal yet. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's good. Good. Thank you. I think that was great.
That
Thank you very much.
Matthew, truly a privilege having you on with us today. I always like to just kind of summarize some of the comments and hope you don't mind, but I like taking notes. And the questions I started off with is the impact on an agent, impact on a company, and impact on the public. What I heard you say on the impact of an agent is that we have to value you, Y-O-U. You've got to be able to explain and articulate and communicate the why. Right? There are differences of the top agents out there. The second, from a company perspective, the companies that lean forward and help agents be better at what they do in their sales skills and provide training and resources are going to come out of this and innovate. That's what I heard you say. And then the third is from the public. I think the public really got to educate themselves. I think they have more choices now. They have a choice to hire a top professional. If you do this 1 out of every 10 years, if you want to have a guided advisor, you've got a choice to go out and interview a guided advisor. If you want to do it on your own, you have the ability. They've always had the ability, but now they've got choices to make those decisions clearly ahead. Fair? Anything else I missed, Adriene?
No, I think that's pretty much it. The bottom line is everybody's got to up their game. They got to make sure that they put out what they say and they actually help people.
And Matthew, I do want to just kind of plug, because you're going to be talking to C21 New Millennium coming up, actually on the 3rd of April. Is that correct? At 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And you're doing a workshop for us, what great realtors should do next. And we're thrilled to have you on. We'll make sure we promote that because your words just are so well received in our community. And then you'll also be speaking to us. We've got you scheduled in July and October and again in January. And so we are just thrilled.
Busy.
Yes, busy man.
Busy.
And we snuck him in. He's going to Connecticut for a keynote.
Thanks.
So we are super grateful for your time. I've always admired you.
Yeah, it's great meeting you.
Really great spot-on discussion today. So thanks again for joining us, and safe travels. And we'll be seeing you on our upcoming webinar.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. And once again, thank you for being the leaders that we need at a time like this.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate you.